Everyone, this is another installment of our Grow Manufacturing webinars for our manufacturing companies in Northern California, sponsored by CMTC. We are very pleased to have Patrice Green, who is a human resource expert and consultant. She'll be talking to us today about the next generational manufacturing workforce and how to get better connected with them. I know we're all struggling to find quality workers, and this is the perfect opportunity to learn more about how to do that. Patrice, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Liz. I want to welcome everybody to the Next Generational Manufacturing Workforce Workshop. I have been so excited about sharing this information with you. As Liz shared, I am a human resources professional. I've been doing recruiting specifically for the last 20 years. I've been doing recruiting in manufacturing for the last 7 years. So let's get started. So right now, there are some people out there that would say we're at a crossroads in manufacturing and that we need a new employment attitude. The pandemic is causing many companies to re-examine their workforce culture. And when I say that, that was a statement that was made by Scott Paul from the Alliance of American Manufacturing. But when I say that, the one thing I want to share is that technology has consumed our lives. And there was a time when recruitment was a people business strictly, but technology has taken it to a different level. And so a lot of the things that we do in recruiting right now are technologically driven, but we have a workforce that is very much people driven. What's in it for me driven. And technology can kind of hinder creating those relationships that we need to create in recruitment so that we can attract that high level or the top candidates to our business. So I say this from the beginning that when we're looking for the next generational workforce, the first thing we have to remember is that it's a people business, and this particular generation is all about people and what's in it for them. There isn't a roadmap that works across the board for all manufacturing companies. So companies will have to look closely at their culture, which could mean changing both procedures and attitudes. It's different. Different companies have different priorities. Their corporate structure is set up differently. How they look towards the future is different for different companies. So we have to really kind of become creative and look at the options that are out there so that we can start to attract that next generational workforce. So manufacturing has long been the backbone of American culture. And in a word, it's instilled pride amongst, the workforce for decades. And, working in manufacturing used to be the thing to do many years ago. But we have to remember that nowadays in the workforce that we have today, manufacturing isn't necessarily looked at as the first place a person's going to go to look for work. Your younger generation, they don't necessarily think manufacturing is like the best job for them. And so we need to begin to change their outlook on manufacturing. We need to begin to show them the benefits of working in manufacturing, especially with all the new technology, because this particular age group is really driven by technology. So robotics is a great interest to them. So we got to remember that in the past, manufacturing was like the backbone, but today, the generation that we have to begin to work with, that's not necessarily how they see it. So manufacturing seems to have a bit of an identity crisis. And so we have to become creative, and we have to get the word out about manufacturing. We have to get the word out about why you want to get into manufacturing. What are the benefits of being in manufacturing? Working locally within your community, maybe doing tours at your business so they can see the robotics in place. They can see what type of individual it takes now to work within manufacturing and start to get the buy-in from the local colleges, from your four-year colleges that are in your area, but get the buy-in into the manufacturing program at your facility and establish yourself as an employer of choice within the community. So awareness is very, very critical. And being aware of what's going on within your local community and really having a strong recruitment strategy. Kylene says that from her perspective, manufacturing organizations should embrace this period of change, rethink their attitudes towards the workforce, and take time to reimagine their corporate culture. And that's a quote from Kylene Zink. She's the director of manufacturing practice at the Ultimate Kronos Group. Younger people are at once frustrated, and sometimes that can really make the recruitment process ineffective. We are facing a skills gap, and we need to generate interest within these different generations so that we can close that skill gap. How do we get our older workers to teach the younger workers? And then how do we get our younger workers to receive that training and not look at it as antiquated, so that we can begin to close that skills gap that is going to only get larger? The pandemic with the high number of deaths, there's going to be, I think that skills gap is going to reach us quite a bit sooner than we had planned. And attracting workers who want to make a profound impact is an ideal opportunity for an interest that's currently being recognized for stepping up to the plate during a pandemic. So that corporate brand that you have out within your community is very, very important. Your ability to establish yourself as an employer of choice is very important. So we have to begin to get creative so that we can generate interest in manufacturing. We have to reach out to people within, different organizations, manufacturing organizations, some trade organizations, your four-year colleges, your junior colleges, and even some of your high schools, because the high schools now have very technologically driven programs. And maybe you can work with one of them and create a manufacturing program to generate interest at that level, so that when they get out of high school, they're looking and maybe considering a manufacturing career. So it's really changing our attitude towards the workforce, realizing that maybe in the past it was easy to attract highly skilled individuals, or minimally skilled individuals for that matter, but that can become very distinctively harder when we don't recognize the next generational workforce for who they are. Do we understand Gen Zs? Do we understand Gen Xers? Do we understand millennials? What turns them on? We need to begin to have that knowledge and expertise so that we can attract the best of the best to our organization. One thing to consider is stop hiring for a cultural fit. And we really kind of need to reimagine, what does that mean? Because a lot of times what it means is, oh, well, I like them. We clicked. And because we clicked, that makes them a good cultural fit. So one thing we can do is we can redefine, what does that mean to be a cultural fit? And we can do that through creating a candidate profile, so that we understand the key skills that we're looking for in our candidates, and that everybody understands what that profile looks like. And then how does that profile fit into your organization? When interviewers said they clicked or had chemistry with a candidate, they often meant that they shared a similar background. Perhaps they played the same sports, or went to the same grad school, or regularly vacationed in the same spot. Then interviewers would interpret that interpersonal comfort as an indicator that the candidate would be a good fit for the firm or for the organization. And sometimes that's not true, because we're different. And as individuals, we're different. And so we might have some things in common, which is great. We still haven't gotten down to that work culture, the way that they work, what their skills and abilities are. We haven't really gotten into that. We're just kind of going on a touchy-feely kind of basis. And that's where a lot of times we make a bad hiring decision, because we are making the skills and capabilities of the individual second, and being comfortable with them first. And so if they have, and not everybody that has the skills and ability is going to be a good fit. You know, there could be some personality issues, you know, maybe they could be overly aggressive, you know, and maybe just based upon, you know, their responses to some of the questions, you know, they may not interact well with the rest of the team. So that's a different type of cultural fit than we vacationed in the same place and we have a similar background. We have similar likes, but that doesn't mean that I'm a cultural fit. And then on the flip side, when interviewers said that they didn't think a candidate would be a good fit, it was often because that person didn't have a similar background, not because the candidate lacked the skills and positive values. And unfortunately, that does happen quite a bit. We have to, you know, just for legal reasons, we have to make sure that the process is compliant and that we're making those employment decisions based upon, you know, what is deemed as compliant. And when you make a hiring decision, it should be based upon the person's skills and ability and their ability to interact within the team, asking those questions, asking those behavioral based questions to get a feel for how they would react to different situations that would occur in the workplace. And the focus tends to be, is this person a fit socially for me? How do I feel when interacting with this person? Rather than, is this person well suited for our organization mission and strategy? And those are two different focuses. And so we have to remember, and another thing that gets us into um, that can get us into a situation is our unconscious bias. Because when somebody touches us and they make us feel comfortable, that's because we're familiar, that's what we like, and that's what we gravitate to. And we kind of gravitate to that unconsciously because of how we were raised, what kind of morals and values that we have. And so sometimes that is a very deceiving thing when our unconscious bias kind of takes over. That kind of tends to deceive us into thinking that somebody's a good fit when they're not. So those behavioral based questions and identifying organizations within your community that can help develop people with the skill set and the demeanor that you're looking for and target them towards your place of employment become critical. We need to figure out what does culture, you know, what is it? What does it mean? And you know what? The funny thing is, this culture means different things to different people. That should go beyond the vague buzzword because it's cultural. It's almost like a buzzword. Oh, they're a cultural fit. But what does it mean? And it means different things for different organizations. Valuing inclusivity, and the culture should, we should value inclusivity, and the culture should align with the firm's mission and vision. So when we're thinking about, is this person going to be a good fit for the organization, we should be thinking in terms of how do they react to our mission and vision? Okay. And, you know, and I'll give you a good example. When you're looking at millennials and Gen Zers and, you know, that's not always going to be what your traditionalists or your baby boomers think. Baby boomers and traditionalists are very loyal people. They tend to start at a job and they don't quit a job unless they're laid off, but they will stay with that job as long as possible. And your millennials and your Gen 2020ers and your Gen Zers, they have no loyalty. So they're looking at your position in an entirely different way. And the key to attracting the right people is ensuring that they understand what your expectations are, what type of an environment it is. And you do that through, you know, becoming creative. You can have a manufacturing day where maybe you invite seniors from a local high school to come in and see how the manufacturing environment is and see what it has to offer. You can have it with colleges. You can have a manufacturing day at a college where maybe you can go out and do presentations about the manufacturing employee and what does that look like and how does robotics fit in? Because, you know, people are kind of afraid of robotics because robotics is replacing a human body from doing something. So that means you need less people. And so getting people to feel comfortable with robotics can become challenging, but it's a great thing and it's great for the organization. And you still need people to function within the organization. Your whole staff is not going to be robotics. A good example of this is Southwest Airlines, which has a cultural focused on fun and love. Those chipper flight attendants with their often goofy PA announcements, turns out, are able to turn planes around at a gate faster, which is a productivity boost for the airline. So, for example, for them, when they're looking for people, they're looking for people that are upbeat, have an outgoing personality, extroverts, people who, know how to make a joke, lighten it up, make people feel good. And that's what they're looking for in candidates when they're doing their recruiting. And a lot of those things aren't easy to identify. Okay. Especially if they don't really realize that's what you're looking for. But somebody who's done their homework may come in very chipper, but and may be, very outgoing for the interview. And you want to really get a good feel for how this person functions outside the interview. Because interviews, as I say, are Hollywood. And, people come in, put their best foot forward and try to make the best impression. And you want to kind of get a good feel for those next generational employees past that piece. You want to be able to look beyond that to determine if they would be someone that your organization wants to invest in. So right now we're between a rock and a hard place. In 2016, it was predicted that 10,000 baby boomers would retire each day over the next 19 years. That's a lot of people. And that's a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge that's retiring. And then 80% of the businesses are struggling to bring in new talent through the door and up through the ranks. And part of that happens because they don't really understand the mission, the vision of the organization. They don't understand how the organization looks at employees. And then, a lot of organizations, they don't offer, financially aren't able to offer like the best benefits, but everything is not about benefits. And so is this a place that someone wants to go work? Is the environment enticing, and does it entice people or pique the curiosity of people to want to come in and see, is this going to be a place for me? Or do they know it in advance? So again, we talk about creativity. We have to be creative, realizing that we're going to be losing a lot of highly skilled employees. And then we have to realize that we have to get new employees through the door. And how do we do that? And there's no cut and stone way to do that. You just have to be creative. You have to know the community that you're in. You need to realize what tools are there, what type of professional organizations are available within that community. How can you get involved within the community to establish yourself as an employer of choice? Sometimes it's going out there and just doing presentations. Sometimes it's getting involved in social issues. Sometimes it's doing something and donating toys or donating clothes or doing something that's being involved in a community event that is giving away, so that people understand that ABC company, they're really involved in the community. They care about the community. They're always out there trying to help individuals. Maybe, can you start an after school program that helps, disadvantaged kids with their homework so they can do better in school? I mean, that might be a stretch, but it's you have to be creative, and you have to begin to figure out how you're going to place yourself in the community as an employer of choice. What is somebody going to think of ABC company when they hear it? Are they going to say, I want to go to work for ABC company because of X, Y, and Z? And that's what you want. And it's hard to get to that point, but it can be done. It can be done. And we have to be willing to be open to change and be open to trying new things to get those people through the door. Currently, we're faced with an aging workforce, the potential to to retire before sharing key knowledge is very real, and the pandemic will only widen that skill gap sooner. So the walls are closing in. And in order for us to be able to manage that and be prepared for that skills gap, we need to start doing that now. We need to get creative. We need to figure out how we can do a transfer of knowledge to our younger workers so that they're better prepared when our older workers retire. So here's the challenge. There's a potential for 2 million jobs that will go unfilled, and manufacturers will be faced with a skills gap. So what does that mean? Well, recruitment is cyclical. The jobs are cyclical. So there's a period sometimes, and actually it happens all the time, not just in manufacturing, but a lot of times there are a lot of jobs that go unfilled because they're looking for a specific type of an individual. But their recruitment efforts are recruiting or attracting that particular type of individual. It's not attracting that skill set. So where manufacturing is challenged is to establish themselves within the community and establish a recruiting strategy that attracts the right and the skilled individual that meets the needs of your organization. And that's done, and there is no set way to get that done. There's no set way that, we just have to be creative. We have to try new things, and we have to continue to be collaborative, work with other manufacturing organizations, because you're all going to be facing the same situation. And, being collaborative and coming up with new ways to attract people. This millennial, Gen Zers, and part of the Gen Xer, they're not easily attracted the way traditionalists and baby boomers were, because their focus is different. Whereas with a baby boomer, they want to, generate enough income so they can go buy a house to take care of their family. And with the millennials and the Gen Zers, they're looking for a house so that their dog will have a place to, play, have enough room for the dog. Is the dog going to be comfortable? Those are two different mindsets that exist. And so how do you attract Gen Xers where their priority isn't necessarily starting a family, having a family, and generating enough income to provide for a family? Their priorities are in different places. And so because those priorities are in different places, we have to begin to understand that generational, those different generations, understand what turns them on and what turns them off, so that we can create a recruiting strategy that will be something that attracts them. And that's the challenge. It's a very complex challenge. How do you successfully manage the transference of skills to minimize the skill gap? That's the question. How do you manage the transference of skills from your older workers, more seasoned workers, to your younger workers who are not as seasoned, who have different priorities, different focuses? How do you transfer that knowledge to them? That's very complex because you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with robots, you're dealing with people. And there are things, different things turn people on. And there are a lot of things that turn, a lot of things that motivate our older, aging workforce that doesn't necessarily motivate the younger generation and the younger workforce. So that only makes the transference of skills harder. So we have to become creative. We have to think out of the box. We have to think inclusivity. And we have to remember that we're attracting a different generation than yourself. And so maybe some of the things that are important to you may not be important to this generation that you're trying to attract. And getting past that. and recognizing that there are a lot of individuals out there that can do a great job for your organization, but you're going to have to you're going to have to figure out a way to attract them. That is going to be the problem. America is experiencing an unprecedented age wave. In fact, so is most of the developed world. Here in the US, 10,000 people turn 65 every day. And at the age of 65, they're really considering retiring. But a lot of people at age 65 are not retiring because of, finances or wanting to, continue on. So the retirement age is getting older. But we have to remember that if 10,000 people are turning 65 every day, then we have to make sure, we have to prepare ourselves for this. We have to start to look at our recruitment strategies, and we have to start to think about how we're going to recruit this younger generation in so that they will want to come to work in manufacturing, which many of them do not see manufacturing as a place that they want to necessarily engage in, and they don't see the benefits of working in manufacturing, whereas your older, more skilled workers did see the benefit of that. Globally, by 2050, nearly 2 billion people, which represents about 22% of the protected population, will be at the age of 60 or older. And that compares to just 12% of the population who were in that age range in 2015. So you can see it, rapidly. It's coming upon us very, 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 very quickly. The truth is, manufacturers must find solutions to address their labor shortages. And with people living longer, meanwhile, they're going to want to work longer. The 5-generational workplace will become the norm. And if a company is going to understand the ever-growing older customer base, it has to have a strong contingent of team members in the demographic informing its decisions and generating ideas and solutions. It's just really important for us to be more open-minded and look at different ways that maybe are out of the norm. Look at something that you may not have considered before and see how that may work for your organization. The truth is, a strong contingent team and that demographic informing, sharing, being a part of the decision-making process and generating the ideas and solutions. And the research has highlighted that how older workers come with an invaluable wealth of knowledge and greater commitment. And research also reveals a number of other compelling realities. Productivity is highest when all these generations work side by side. Diverse teams drive better financial returns, and a mixed age teams outperform those with members in similar ages. Let me say that again. Mixed age teams outperform those with members of similar ages. So people kind of tend to migrate to teams, like teams. And what we're saying is we need to shake that up a little bit and create teams that that have your older generation and your younger generation working together side by side, so that transference of skills can take place, and so that we're prepared when these older workers retire. We have to have a contingent plan for that. So this is the 5 generations. We have our traditionalists who were born between 1990 to 1945. We have our boomers from 1946 to 1964. We have our Gen Xers from 1965 to 1976. Our millennials from 1977 to 1997. And then we have our Gen 2020ers, or our Gen Zers as they're called, anybody after 1997. So we still have a few traditionalists in the workforce. They're not completely gone, but they're quickly moving out. We still have a lot of baby boomers engaged. They want to work. They're loyal. They're just looking for a place to call home. But they also know that because of their skills, that can be intimidating to a younger generation or younger supervisors even as well. So, baby boomers are trying to figure out how to, stay within the workforce and engage and work with the younger generation. That's on their mind. Your Gen Xers, your millennials, and your Gen 2020ers, they are looking, they have different, they're not loyal. They don't stay on the job as long. They stay 2-3 years max, and then they're gone because they really have a what's in it for me type of mentality. And so that's where we as employers, as manufacturers, have to remember, and that's where it's changing. Whereas people, your traditionalists and your boomers, they were just loyal. Whatever the company wanted, that's what they did. But now we are faced with our generational workforce being one that's really looking at what can you do for me? And that's a switch. That's a big switch. And we have to begin to address what their needs are, what it is that turns them on, and what we can do to incorporate some of that within our organizational culture so that they will be enticed to come and work for us. We don't need to, I'm not saying we need to beg them. I'm not saying that, we need to, do that. But what I am saying is we have to be open to new things, and we have to be open to considering some things that we didn't necessarily think was important in the past, and realize, with the movement and, everybody wants to go to work for some place. Everybody's looking for that quality of life. Your boomers and your traditionalists, they worked. They didn't quality of life. What was that? They just worked, and they did whatever needed to be done to get the job done. But this new generational workforce is not going to do that. That's not what's important to them. And so how do we create that quality of life balance in the workforce, in the work culture, so that people feel comfortable? They know that their employer really cares about them. And, how do we create that balance? As manufacturers, that's what we're challenged with, creating that balance. The multi-generational workforce today, a crucial part of closing the skill gap would be to build cross-functional teams that engages all generations to work together cohesively. And that can be a challenge depending upon, where you live and, how those individuals were raised. Are they collaborative? Do they work well as a team? I know that in the colleges, I know I'm out here in California, but I know one of the things, Cal State Northridge, one of the things that it teaches, and when they did a focus group with businesses, and one of the things that businesses said that they really wanted from people coming out of college is their ability to work cohesively within a team, and that was lacking in the educational process. And so how do you create that cohesive team within your work, within your culture, where everybody has the responsibility and understands they have a responsibility to teach one another, to help one another, to, understand what the processes are, and your older generation understanding that things are changing and things might not always work the way they used to, whereas your younger generation understanding the foundation of where these skills started and why they're important within the work culture. So how do you blend that together? That's the challenge. Manufacturers must attract, engage, and elicit cooperation and productivity from 4 or maybe 5 generations under one roof, and that is happening today. And then generational knowledge transfer is essential, but a difficult goal for corporations and an important source for your personal development. Each generation brings its own skill set to the table. And you can capture this through communication and collaboration. Do you do internal focus groups with your employees to get a better understanding of what their concerns are and what roadblocks do they see in the work culture? Do they, do you elicit their help in coming up with better ideas on how to make things run more effectively? Because they're the ones performing the job, so they're the ones who can tell you how it could work more effectively. Do you engage them to find out that information so that maybe some of it can be incorporated, some may not be able to be incorporated? But do you know, are you aware of how your employees feel about the work culture? Are they frustrated? As employers, we have to, it's a people business. And when the frustration builds to a certain point, it can get to a point, and then it can cause problems with productivity and with people working together. So we encourage that collaborative engagement within the workforce so that you can get the skill transference and you can understand what's actually going on and maybe how things can run differently, elicit ideas. People should feel comfortable sharing that kind of stuff with their leadership teams.
Really captures quite a bit, not only about millennials, but also your Zs. So what are your Zs? Your Zs are from really born 2000, really 1998, 2000, depending on which survey you go by, up until probably 2020 is when they're going to probably cut that off. So that's your Z. So right now, they're 20 years and younger. So if you're hiring 18 to 20-year-olds, you already have your Zs in the workforce. You've got your millennials from the 80s to the 2000s. Your Xers are 66 to 80. Your baby boomers were born in 46 through 66. And again, those are flexible depending on by what survey you go by, but that's a rough estimate. But interestingly, look at these covers that have been out with different magazines over the years. And I actually want to read to you a great quote that I found. It says, "The world is passing through troublous times. The young people of today think of nothing but themselves. They have no reverence for parents or old age. They're impatient of all restraint. They talk as if they knew everything, and what passes for wisdom with us is foolishness with them. As for the girls, they are forward, immodest, unladylike in speech, behavior, and dress." Folks, that's from Peter the Hermit in 1274. So needless to say, these thoughts about the newer generations have been around for years and years. Nothing new. And yet, we need to figure it out. And what's funny is we talk to companies every day across the country, and it's been about 10, 15 years, the millennials have been in the workforce, and they're now just figuring out. But interestingly, they're still complaining about it instead of figuring out what are their key characteristics and how do we tap into that to fill the skills gap. So we know back from 2013, the Boston Consulting Group actually did a report, and we have great information now. So the top condition for manufacturers' competitiveness is access to a talented workforce. That is key. And then, of course, we've got what the Department of Labor has indicated that as of June 2017, how many jobs remained unfilled. And I actually think that's a very conservative number. We know it's larger and growing every day. The good news is we actually have that resource now. With the millennials and the Zs now entering, we have it. So what are some facts? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about these two generations. So how many make up of the millennials? 75.4 million. And then you have the Z generation, which is at 74 million and growing. And if you talk to folks right now, it's funny, they'll say, well, the silver tsunami, all the baby boomers, they're retiring. That's true. But talk to some of those Xers that were born from 66 on, and you know what they're going to tell you? They're already thinking about retirement. So guess what? Seriously, in 10 years, you could be looking at a population of only millennials and Zs because your Xers are already thinking about retirement. And that's very interesting. So let's talk about them because you know what? As we capture their strengths and their key characteristics, we're going to find that we can align their key characteristics and our learning and development strategies to attract them and retain them. So here's some facts. we've got the average person pretty much in the millennials and the Z generation both owning about 7.7 connected devices. Interestingly, they use 3 of them per day. Let's talk about their attention spans. You got millennials who are at 12 seconds and you've got Zs who are at 8 seconds. And another fact that's been out recently is that your Zs sometimes check their device 100 times per day. It's a habit. What's interesting is this actually has trickled down into other generations. Think about it. If you're an Xer or a baby boomer and how often you're checking your phone, it actually has become a habit. And I can say this with accuracy because I'm an Xer and I have the Amazon app on my phone. I'm a one-click, one-swipe type of gal. I want that. I personally like that. I don't like to wait. If pages don't load, I move on, and I'm an Xer. So as much as we'd like to point the finger, we need to look back at ourselves and say, how has technology shaped me? Am I also becoming impatient? Am I checking my phone? If I'm standing in line at the grocery store, what am I doing? Because it really does reflect our culture in general, not just these generations. So with that in mind, knowing behavior and appetite now for multitasking is so obvious. I talk to manufacturers that say they're not allowing any technology out on the floor. No, none of their phones are allowed. No technology out on the floor. Interestingly, I was at a brick manufacturer in North Carolina. They don't allow the phones out there, but they do have technology. They have iPads out there that are monitoring the processes and the equipment. And the different operators actually have their own avatar on this iPad.
So as you can see, you have to get creative. And just in this last example, they put tablets out there on the floor. They couldn't take their phones, but they put tablets out there, and they found that the employees were more engaged. They were more on top of their job because they had these tablets, because that's what they're accustomed to doing. They check it often. They stay on top of it. So again, we just have to come up with creative ways that we can engage this new generational workforce, how we can keep them engaged, how we can get them to understand the potential, the growth potential, and what's in it for them. So manufacturing reputation. Your reputation is going to be something that is really important to the organization as you move forward from a recruitment perspective. So you want to consider it, ongoing initiatives to engage the community, such as regularly scheduled manufacturing tours, joint career education initiatives at colleges and high schools. You want to communicate educational requirements for succeeding in manufacturing careers so that the skills needed are clearly understood. And then you want to build your reputation within the community. That's crucial in identifying the right talent. With the ever-growing list of expectations from Gen Xers, Millennials, and Gen Ys, that reputation is going to be critical to drawing in the best of the best. Change decades of antiquated misconceptions about manufacturing. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and you want to make sure that people really understand manufacturing today, what it has to offer today, and what your organization brings to the table, and how they fit in. What does your organization offer them? Many visualize equipment straight out of the industrial age, and they have very little understanding of the advances in computer-aided design, 3D printing, robotics, CNC machining, and more. They just have preconceived ideas, and they really don't understand the manufacturing environment at all today.
I wanted just to make a mention that, what they're also talked about as the iGen generation, millennials on steroids, which I actually think is very false. I'm not a big fan of that one. They're the always-on generation, hyper-connected, thirst for instant gratification, and very research-heavy. So keep that in mind. So what's the challenge? Well, when we did our survey, interestingly enough, manufacturers agreed that millennials are important to their future, but less than half have a good understanding of this group. And this is actually an opportunity for you in your organization Are you doing multi-generational training? So when I say that, I'm not just talking about your supervisory training and your lead training and management training where you're talking about multi-generations and managing a diverse workforce. But when you have new employees coming in that are millennials and Zs, are you training them on the other generations so that they can communicate effectively? Because I'm going to share a couple points next that really can impact that. And actually with this picture, I wish we would have had an 8-track because some of you know what an 8-track is. So let's talk about some of the myths that are out there because it's so important to have a good understanding for all generations. So some of the myths with the Zs and the millennials is that they have no work ethic. That's not true. They have a self-centered work ethic. These employees are dedicated to completing their tasks well, but have not been raised in a way that demands them to look around and see what should be done next. And let me expound on this. I call them the gaming generations. They grew up gaming. That's what they did. And what did they do with their games? They leveled up. They totally wanted to level up. So they weren't looking around for additional ammo on their level unless they needed it. What they were doing is they were looking to complete the task at hand and move on. And that's exactly what they do. I'm hearing from employers all the time about how they've got these generations coming in. They ask for their task list. They do it efficiently. And then they're like, I'm done. Can I go? And employers are like, no, are you kidding me? So it's interesting that older generations look at this as having no work ethic, where the younger generations actually look at this and say, hey, I've done it well, I'm ready to move on. So it's just different. And that's what I want to point out. It's different. Next one. They don't want to put in the hours to get ahead. Not true. They're willing to put in the time. However, they're uninterested in space time. Keep in mind, they have a different value system in this. Baby boomers, they were willing to invest time. Your millennials and Z see time not to be wasted. They see time as a commodity. Now, I want to challenge you on this because think about it. They had shifted the way workforce is looked at nowadays. You know what? When I came in as an Xer into the workforce, flexible time meant instead of 8 to 5, okay, you can start at 7:45, but you still stay till 8. Nowadays, you have people working remote. You do have a flex work time as well as flex schedules. So it's interesting how they have actually impacted us in a positive way, where we as Xers and baby boomers are also starting to value time in a good way. So think about that, chew on that, because it is important. It really is. So also with them, with time, I just want you to think about how you need to reward small successes and string them together for milestones. So they're looking at time a little bit different. The fact that they use the word value totally shifts things for us, because for Xers and baby boomers, when we started a job, value was seen on Friday when we got our paycheck. They want to be valued. It's a different word and it's used differently now. Next one, no respect for authority. Actually, they do have great respect for leaders and loyalty, but they don't respect authority just because. Loyalty and respect must be earned. The other thing that's amazing about these two generations is that they elevate friend to family status. Whoa, this blows my mind. I tell my children all the time, guys, don't do this. Don't do this. They're not going to be there for you like family. And yet they do. They elevate friends to family status. So you need to be thinking about that and how you can tap into that. And I'm going to touch on that again. But keep that in mind. Also, their number one reason they quit is they're not happy with their direct supervisor. It's like an 84% rate of why they quit. Not happy with direct supervisor. So I want to ask you, how's your leadership training? How are you grooming and mentoring? And I'm going to mention it again because it's that important. Next one, they don't want to grow up. I always laugh with this slide. They really don't know how to grow up. Come on, your Zs are just growing up. Millennials, they've been around a while. These younger generations, they're facing a delayed adulthood. Remember, they're staying in the home a lot longer. Many of them are moving back in with parents. Couple interesting things I just want to point out with them. Millennials, They do remember the recession, but not a lot of adversity. But they do remember the recession, and to them, nothing lasts forever, definitely higher divorce rates. So everything is unsure. Actually, what's interesting is back for the baby boomers, you would stay at a job for a while because you didn't want it to look bad on your resume. But nowadays, it's more common. They stay for a few years and they do move on. So we need to talk about how to keep them longer than a couple of years. We want to keep them definitely longer for that. Something else to remember, your Zs have no memory of 9/11. And I pause with that because that actually is pretty relevant. Yes, we do have a delayed adulthood for many of them. So you know what, guys? They're not going to grow up without us helping them, mentoring them, guiding them along, giving them the information they need to succeed. So what are some other key traits? Connections and experiences. This is huge. Remember, they are a Google generation. They need an answer, they go to where it's found. That's why so many times they jump chain and they'll go right and knock on the CEO's door.
And so you can see that, there are a lot of myths out there. And there are a lot of misconceptions about this new generational workforce that are not true. And she shared a lot of good information on things that we need to think about as we begin to recruit for this, recruit and identify the top talent. Of course, we're always looking for the best, but you can't find the best if you don't understand how that generation clicks. This is the new generation. She's right. They're Googlers. If they don't know something, they Google it. They find out about it. And then they go straight to the top to get an answer. They don't necessarily follow protocol, but they work hard. They still want to succeed. They still just need some guidance, but you have to begin to understand them to get that guidance. You want to broaden the potential talent pool. Millennials will be key to long-term growth, and don't discount your Gen Xers seeking new opportunities or career shift. And with many having started families, Gen Xers tend to value stability. And research indicates that millennials will leave a job after 2 or 3 years. So the challenge with the millennials is to entice them and encourage them to stay on a job longer so that you have that stability in your skills gap, and realizing that the Gen Xers they look at job stability. They look at longevity. They look at the long-term part. And your millennials and your Gen Zers, they're more short-term, and they're not as loyal as employees. So we need to broaden that talent pool so that we have a sufficient amount of Gen Xers, a sufficient amount of millennials, and a sufficient amount of Gen Zers to balance out the workforce and be able to meet the needs of each group. And don't be afraid of old school methods. Many manufacturers require specialized skill sets that are difficult to learn in the classroom. So a lot of this stuff is learned on the job. Savvy manufacturers are investing in internships to help people develop these specialized skill sets. And that is so true. If you had a senior in high school as an intern and they learned some of these specialized skill sets, then, their loyalty to you would be far greater than if they didn't have that internship, if they weren't given that opportunity. You don't need to be a Fortune 500 company to offer internships. Many mom and pop shops offer part-time after school jobs and individual internships through partnerships through local high schools and community colleges. And four-year colleges have internships as well. So if you're looking for that next generational manager, you can offer an internship through one of the local colleges from their manufacturing program. Do you still have your high school, depending upon the size of your organization? Maybe you can offer an internship, from the local high school. There's just many options. Don't close any doors. Look at different ways of getting things done. And don't be able to try it because it just might work for you. Some of these ways don't work for everybody, but they may work for you. And so, but you won't know if you don't try it. Millennials want to tackle new challenges. They want to, you want to be able to engage new employees because boredom is a deal breaker for many millennials. So, and that has to do with their attention span and staying involved. And you don't want them to get bored on the job. So how do you do that? How do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them from getting bored? You realize that they have a short-term short-term focus, and then they're on to the next thing. How do you keep them engaged? Again, it takes some creativity to be able to accomplish that. Manufacturing thrives on innovation and transformation. So how do you engage your people to share their innovation? How do you engage on what they think the transformation looks like? What do they have to offer? How do they fit in? Are you engaging them and doing succession building time, having succession building time with your employees and giving them the goals and giving them, the tools that they need to learn and maintain the skill set in the workforce? You want to assign meaningful responsibilities to new hires and ask them to consider developmental assignments in different areas, listen to their goals and hopes for enrichment or advancement. So when a new person starts, they start in a particular department, but how do you teach them new things? How do you get them to learn what goes on over in Department C and in Department F? How do you, as an organization, how do you build your culture so there's cross-functional? People are constantly learning new things so that you don't find yourself shorthanded. If you have a team that is multi-skilled and you have people who can cover in more than one spot, then you can close that skill gap fairly quickly. You want to map out personalized career paths. You want to let them know, again, we're in a what's in it for me. We're looking at a generation that looks at it that way. So you want to map out their career path. That gives you an understanding of where they're going. It gives them an understanding of where they can go with your organization and what they need to do to get to the level, their desired level within the organization. And you want to develop a mentor program with leadership and with your older workers. Maybe you have a mentorship program where they're working together and helping each other. If you can have your leaders, mentor your future leaders, people who've demonstrated some of those leadership skills, so that they understand that there is something that they can do on a higher level within the organization. So it's really working within the culture, creating cross-functional teams, keeping people engaged and keeping them learning new things. Avoid them becoming bored. That's the challenge. As you can see, things have changed over the many, many years. Things have changed. And so it's important for us to build those cross-functional teams. It's important for us to build those cross-functional teams. Newer employees can gain important knowledge and build their skill sets through senior team leads. And experienced employees should be encouraged to take advantage of the enthusiasm, creativity, and comfort with technology that the younger generation brings. And a lot of times your older generation is not as comfortable with technology, and your younger generation finds technology to be very easy. How do you merge those two? How do you get those two to work together? It's important to understand that differing values stand motivators for each generation, and that no one perspective is best. Cross-generational teams help foster knowledge transfer from baby boomers thinking about retiring to young team members. And we want to use technology to make the work environment more appealing to the savvy millennial and the Gen Z employees. The idea is we all want to hire rock stars. We want to build a culture that attracts the best of the best. You get incredible value and you build incredible organizations by recruiting the right people. You want to brand yourself as the employer of choice. So how do you attract millennial talent and close the skill gap? One way is to create a people-centric culture. This will attract Gen Z workers, and managers should shine the light on diverse and rewarding career paths in manufacturing and engage the next generation talented workforce. You want to engage and connect. You want to change those stereotypical images of manufacturing and what it has to offer. You can participate in local STEM programs where students can learn the ins and outs of advanced manufacturing. And you want to have a continuous improvement process of your corporate brand to the next generational workforce as the employer of choice. I can't tell you how important being branded as the employer of choice will be, because your next generational workforce is always looking for what's in it for me. And the manufacturer that shares with the next generational workforce what's in it for them, and they can see the growth potential, and they can see that they can learn and receive a lot if with the expectation that they'll give a lot back, that's going to be the successful blend. You want to set the foundation. Today, go the extra mile to show employees that you value them. Remember, it's a people business. And one of the things that is important to the next generation workforce is they want to be valued. They want to feel like they can contribute. They want to feel like they're a part of the team. So how your employee feels today sets the tone for the next generation tomorrow, and how they'll perceive you as an employer or an employer of choice. A good reputation goes a long way towards attracting the next generational workforce. So you can do that through technology and diversity, your work-life balance and flexibility, through training and feedback, by providing financial rewards and validation, by engaging and allowing them to provide input, and having co-worker engagements, having those cross-generational work teams that work together. You want to be able to reinforce trust and manager accountability. Good things come when leaders trust their employees and vice versa. Your employees want to feel like you trust them. They want to feel like you know that they're going to do a good job. And sometimes what happens is we put all these policies and procedures into play that make a person feel like you don't trust them. And when they feel that way, they tend to not be at their best, and they don't produce as much. Building a culture of trust and reliability is dependent on both employee and managers having the data needed to make good decisions and to deliver great results. The next generational employee expects open and flowing communication. Gen Zers want frequent check-ins with their manager related to performance and professional development. Prioritizing the employee experience will help and not hinder manufacturers' digital transformation. And when organizations create an atmosphere where people love to work, it's a game changer. And I can't say that enough. It is a game changer. You know, when you look at retail, when you look at Nordstrom's, and you look at Nordstrom's, what makes them successful isn't just is their brand, but people love working. Their employees love working there. They create a culture within their organization where their employees are rewarded for good work. They know their employees know that they're valued. They're constantly doing things and reinforcing, and rewarding their people for and recognizing them for their good work. But the reputation that Nordstrom has, what makes them successful, is that their employees love to work there. They don't quit. They stay unless they get laid off or unless they've just done a bad job, but they don't generally quit because the culture is one that values its employee. And I think creating that type of culture becomes essential when you want to keep people. You don't want to create an environment where you have high turnover, because then you're constantly training and then you lose the best of the best and you don't always get the best of the best back. So I use Nordstrom's as an example because that type of employee-centric environment can be done by anyone. It doesn't matter if you're retail or if you're corporate America, if you're manufacturing, it doesn't matter. That type of employee-centric environment can be created by any organization. Working with local community associations such as the educational system and the communities that rely on these businesses for economic growth and prosperity. Working within the local community, having those relationships, working with your educational systems, they will always refer people to you for work. They're always, because their students are going to be looking for work. So if, you offer the type of work that their students can engage in, they're going to refer. You're going to have that constant flow of people coming in and wanting to work for you. So that employer brand of choice and working within the local organization and getting your name out there. And when they hear, ABC company, they know what that means. ABC company manufactures this and their employees like working there because of this. And I want to go work for that organization. It's a group effort, and manufacturers must embrace this type of help within the community, to save the future of their business. You have to create that rhythm within the community so that people know that you're there for one. They know what you have to offer. They know what type of work you do, and they know if they fit in, and they know that when they go to work there, it's going to be a place where they're going to enjoy working. And working with local trade associations will allow you to develop the tools you need to help market your business and industry. And you can, that's free. That's stuff that maybe you would end up having to pay for. But when you work with your local trade organizations, they offer a lot of these tools and resources to you for free, so you don't have to spend that extra money. And then you have that relationship, so they refer people to you. So you want to kind of create a open door when it comes to recruitment. And you want people to know that they can come work over here because of X, Y, Z. And again, establishing a partnership with your local community colleges, high schools, middle schools will help your company feed the idea of manufacturing career at an early age. You want to establish yourself, I say it again, as the employer of choice. people, you know, you want your high school seniors who are going to be graduating to be considering you as an employer. Having those manufacturing days, you know, for those students who can come and work for you, who come to work for you. They understand what kind of educational requirements it's going to take to work for your organization. Some of those may have it coming right out of high school. Some may need to go to a junior college to acquire those skills. But at the end of the day, you want them to come to work for you. You want them to want to come to work for you. You want to bring in experts, you know, trade organizations. They are, you know, you want to always stay informed. There's always new things out there. There's always new things coming up. And you want to stay informed. And so these trade organizations, they have conferences, webinars, you know, they have annual meetings. They put out, you know, things that you can read, but you want to stay informed of what's changing and how to keep up with that change. And you want a culture, a work environment where that's very high on the demands list. Okay, what's the demands list? You know, these Gen Zers and millennials, they have a demand list. They have certain expectations that they want from an employer, and you want to be high up on, you know, high up on that totem pole as someone who can provide and meet those needs. Leverage and embrace it. It's a people business. It's not, you know, technology may be a very big part of it, but to attract the people, you have to understand it's a people business. And sometimes we lose sight of that because we have so many tools and resources, but it's a people business. Knowing where to look, identify your best resources for identifying the right candidates, get creative, develop and strengthen those relationships. Rather than conduct a 6-month search for someone to manage your company's robots, why not train a couple of employees, some of your top employees, to learn how to work with the robotics, okay? This will not only make your search easier, it's going to cut down on how many people you're going to have to let go of because you've incorporated the robotics. So you're offering an opportunity for some of the employees there to learn. And then, but you can pay, you know, one of the options is that you can pay for their education as part of their work requirement. You can offer to pay for their education for 2 years if they commit to staying with the company for another 4 years, and you can get that in writing. So, you know, there are different things that you can do to get people to want to stay working for you and to bring people in. But meeting those educational requirements is a great way. And if workers are going to be displaced, incorporate them into the future so you don't have to displace all of them. Of course, you'll still end up with an excess number of workers, but natural attrition will solve that problem for you ultimately. And selecting the best and the brightest from among your pool of workers will help your company run better, more efficiently, and ultimately more profitably, and it will help shore up the skilled labor shortage. Only by inspiring the next generation of workforce, organizations can create an equally inspiring next generation manufacturing industry. And that concludes our webinar. And so we are going to open the floor for questions.
While we're waiting on any questions that can come in either through the chat or the Q&A, I wanted to quickly talk about a program that's sponsored by CMTC. It's called CMA Plus. Because we're in a natural disaster area, all of our manufacturers have the option to do up to 24 hours of free to you consulting. And so if you want to learn more about what HR programs or processes that you can implement to find better and new employees, please reach out to us and we'll be sure to connect you with the right person. I'm not seeing any questions coming in. We'll give it another minute. Patrice, that was great. I learned so much. I'm like, oh, I identify with that. And then I think about the next generation of the Gen Z, and I'm excited for there's so much opportunity for improvement. And I think that this really highlighted that.
Thank you. And I will also reinforce the CMTC CMA Plus.
Yes.
That is an excellent program. I've been through it myself. And it's an excellent program for anybody who's looking to pick up some new ideas. And it's a wide range, so they can help, you with the wide range of things. It's just not one piece of it. They look at the whole manufacturing landscape, and they can incorporate it into that CMA Plus program. So it's a great program.